Well, on Bring It Home, we're back at Disaster City, part of the Texas Engineering Extension Service here on the campus of Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. And we're talking with Bob McKee, who's the director of this institution and also the director of Texas Task Force 1. Bob, thanks for being with us.
You bet.
Tell us very briefly, what is Texas Task Force 1?
Texas Task Force 1 is a highly trained group of men, women, and canines that respond across the state of Texas as needed for search and rescue, and one of 28 FEMA credentialed teams that can respond nationally.
Now, about how many people in that program?
We have about 491 rostered members at this point in time.
Wow.
The team has continued to grow as we've seen the very busy hurricane season. We've needed to augment our resources.
Now, not all of them are on call at one time. How does that work?
We have 3 teams that rotate each month that are first up, and then when we have the big disasters, we do have to call into those other rosters.
Like Katrina or Galveston or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, they train out of here?
Yes, with Texas Task Force 1, this is our home training base, so we will train both our people as well as our canines.
And you train lots of other responders here, about how many a year?
We train several thousand a year. TEACS trains 221,000, I believe, were last year's figures, all across the United States. And again, the opportunity to come here at a very unique facility is something that most responders desire.
Now, last time that we visited you, we looked at individual skills and some rubble piles made out of boards and lumber and so forth. Tell us what we've got in the background right here, and what kind of training would you get off of a prop like this?
This prop is actually many different training scenarios in one. It's a government complex building. It's got exposed columns. It's got collapsed parking garage. It's got a collapsed rear section that goes right out into a rubble pile. So these scenarios can be brought together in either an exercise or a training.
Now, I see a rubble pile here. It looks like there's a hole in it down here. What do you do with this?
In and throughout any of our rubble piles, we have tunnels that we've pre-engineered that are hides. So our victims can go in and hide. So we use real live victims so that the canines are scenting on real people.
Or your responders, your rescuers.
Exactly.
And then I assume you make them up. Some will be injured, some will not be injured, and so forth.
We'll moulage them up. They'll have bleeding parts. They'll have broken bones. And again, that's important.
Bob, I got to tell you that from one side, this looks a lot kind of like the Murrah office building in Oklahoma City. Was that on purpose?
It was, in part. The hanging slab that we saw in Murrah building was a very challenging event for the responders that were there.
That's on the back side here. There's a big piece of concrete that used to be a floor that's hanging down, and
Yes.
they have to, what, prop that up while they get to people underneath?
They have to actually pin that, tie it off so that it won't fall.
I see. And then on the side up here, it looks to me like there's some holes in the wall that have been cut.
Yes, we cut through. We can cut through the concrete with pneumatic tools, with hydraulic tools, and any way we can get through that building, we will do that.
It's pretty remarkable, and I'm sure it's pretty tiring out here in the summer sun.
It gets warm.
Okay, let's see what else is on our tour up ahead. Now, Bob, we're coming up on something that looks like a big square building here. I can see some cutouts where I assume your people practice getting through it. What is this? What are we simulating?
This is a theater complex building. What that does for us is it has a wide open space that we can put a lot of victims, 100 or 200 victims in, and simulate a mass casualty event.
Will you get that many, volunteers?
Absolutely. Volunteers typically line up for us. Again, that's one of the great benefits of being here at Texas A&M.
So what's different about a rescue where you've got 150 people in there versus we looked before at a collapsed house where maybe there are 5, 6, 8 victims?
A mass casualty is defined as any more than 2 victims, 2 or more victims. Imagine, if you will, being that first police officer or that first firefighter pulling up and seeing 100 people come at you. You've got to triage them. You've got to somehow take care of those people.
What do you mean by triage?
Identify what type of injuries they have. What type of care they need. So we have a classification system that those people all fall into, and that has to be done quite rapidly.
Does that mean, for instance, who has the most pressing need, who has to be evacuated first, who can wait? Is that the sort of decision you make?
That's correct. What medical treatment they need, but also, are they contaminated in any way? Have they been contaminated by a chemical or biological agent? And then we would have
to
might
have to be decontamination.
Yes.
Bob, I know this one's really tough, but I understand that on some scenes where you have a large number of people injured like this, there aren't enough facilities to evacuate everybody at once. Sometimes if people are very badly injured, they might just have to wait because there's not anything you can do for them. Is that something that you actually train your responders to deal with?
Those are some of the very difficult decisions that responders make, is who and when, and to understand that there's a prioritization is difficult to train, but we try to build that into all of the training that we do and all the training that responders have over their years of service.
Making it as realistic as you can.
And here they can put it into practice.
When I say making it realistic, do you have any of your people that have actually then had to deal with these things that come back and talk to you about that fact?
We do. We've had a number of scenarios, and our own people within Texas Task Force 1, again, they're real world responders, so they're using these skills in the real world.
You got a couple of really unique props up ahead. Let's pull up and take a look. Bob, it looks like we're coming up on a rail yard here. You've got a bunch of train cars, and some of them look like they're in pretty bad shape. What are we learning to do here?
We've got both a freight train and a passenger train. Those have unique challenges from the rescue standpoint as well as the scene safety and security standpoint of taking care of what is secondary to the wreck.
Boy, till I pull up here and stop, I didn't realize how many different kinds of tank cars there are, but I guess that's because you carry so many different types of chemicals.
That's correct. The transportation industry on a daily basis is moving a lot of things, and our emergency responders know what types of cars carry what and what types of chemicals.
How are they going to know what's inside those things?
There's a marking system that each of our responders are trained to, so they know what to look for at a distance and how to track that back.
Now here's a prop I wouldn't expect to see. Did you guys build a train? How'd you get a train in here?
Amtrak donated the train that you see, and it's a passenger train. We're able to use it for, again, that mass casualty circumstance that we can put a lot of people in there, but also, again, just the uniqueness of how it's positioned and the shoring that's required.
Coming around to the corner here, was this actually a train that was in service?
This train actually did crash several years ago, and Amtrak offered it up to Disaster City.
And what would be some special requirements, some special needs when you start looking at a train as a rescue venue?
Well, again, it's going to be full of people, so you're going to have those numbers to deal with. But
harder to get to sometimes?
Harder to get to. That information of where is it, how to access that. You're not going to have a road infrastructure, for instance. And then those hazards that are associated with it, the power, the fuel, and all of the associated challenges.
Bob, it's got to be pretty expensive to set up an organization like this. Are there many places in the United States that have this wide range of props?
There are very few places in the world that have this collection of props in the opportunity to both train and exercise. TEACS as a whole has some very unique opportunities, and that's what makes us special across the United States and the world.
Bob, we're almost at the end of our tour of Disaster City. We've seen some rubble piles before. Tell me what we're looking at right here.
What you're looking at this side of the rubble pile is the tunnel entrance, two tunnel entrance that we have that we can actually put people under. So you're actually kind of seeing the insides of this particular rubble pile.
Now they train dogs for finding live victims and also for finding bodies, is that right?
There are dogs that look for explosives, for bodies or deceased, or live find. Search and rescue focuses on live find for us.
And the dogs have to train to a certain standard. Do they train on more than one type of rubble pile? How does that work?
Yes, they need at least 3 rubble piles to certify. So they're always training. They're one of the hardest training responders in the search and rescue community.
Yeah, well, and very much used. I know they're always part of the very first flyaway team. Well, it's been a great visit here to Disaster City on the campus of Texas A&M University. Our thanks to the folks who have hosted us here, and especially Bob McKee, who leads Disaster City and Texas Task Force 1. Bob, thanks for our visit today and for all you and your folks do to keep us safe.
You bet.